Welcome to 2022 Saturday Sampler. Before we get started with block 1, there are some tools of the trade that I think new quilters should be familiar with, and I'll go over them real quick. First, you need a good pair of snips. I like the OmniGrid little yellow handle ones. They're very sharp and they snip really nice, but there's all kinds of good snips on the market. These are a pair of Tula Pinks, but you need some sharp snips so you can cut your threads as you go along. You need to have a new needle in your sewing machine. It doesn't have to be a Bernina needle, but you need a new needle. Sewing machine manufacturers recommend that you change your needle with every project, so approximately every 6 to 8 hours of sewing. So make sure when you sit down and you start a new project, you have a new needle in your sewing machine. When you get to a stage that you know you're going to quilt forever and ever, then you're going to want to buy needles by the hundreds. You need a box of good silk pins, and the finest ones that we sell are these blue and yellow ones. They're extremely thin, and they just go in and out of your fabric just like butter. So there are all kinds of configurations. There's the blue and yellow ones. These are all glass head pins, so the iron can press over them and it won't melt the tip of the ball of the pins. There's these blue and yellow ones. They're a hair thicker, but they're still silk pins and they sew really good. I'm at home, so I grabbed over to my little frog that I have next to my sewing machine where I put all my scraps into, and I really like these red and white ones. They are also silk pins, but I can tend to see them better because I'm getting old. So what can I say? You need a good seam ripper, and my preferred seam ripper is this little what Bernina sells, and we sell them at the shop to anybody. They are very small, and this cutting part of it is sharp, and they just get it. If you're sewing 12 stitches per inch, it will just get right in there and cut your threads very easily. I just want to show you the difference in cutters. You can get, some cutters are just really fat and thick, and it's hard to get under the stitch to even cut it. So make sure you have a nice pair of small seam ripper. I'm not saying that you're going to ever unpick, but in case you do have to unsew, have a nice sharp seam ripper. For block 1, you are going to need a marking utensil. We like the sew line. The sew line is a ceramic lead, and you can buy only one mechanical pencil, and then you can buy the replacement lead in pink and yellow and green and white, and I have the graphite color in this particular one. It also has an eraser. So you buy one pencil, and then you can replace the lead with the appropriate color of lead that you need for your current project. So you need a good mechanical pencil. I like to use my 6x12 ruler when I'm doing piecing because it's easier to move around my cutting surface instead of my 6x24. And then last but not least, for marking half square triangles, and I'm going to demonstrate this today, you need a quick quarter marker. And if you're new to quilting and you've never seen how this is, these are really nice to be accurate on your 1/4 inch seam. So the first thing we're going to do on our first block is A and B 4-inch squares. We're going to mark one of them, the lighter color, on the back with this quick quarter marker. So I'm going to make sure that I have this ruler in the corner. Make sure it's coming out in the middle of the corner on this end. These places where they have plastic acrylic all the way across is where I put my fingertips. And I'm going to mark a line down the middle and then I'm going to slant my pencil towards the ruler, and I'm going to mark on the outside. Now we're not coloring, so it's just a mark, it's just a guideline so you can see where to stitch. So that you will have 3 lines marked after you stitch. Now I'm going to pair this one up with one of the other colors. And some of you are going to notice right away, these are not the colors that are in your Saturday sampler. And that's because I have 2 other employees making the blocks exactly like you're going to make them. But I decided I am taking the scraps from last year's quilt and seeing how far I can go with making these blocks on this year's quilt. So these are my A and B square, my A and B 4-inch squares. I'm going to pair them together. I'm going to put a pin on each side in the same direction that the lines are going to hold it together while I go to the sewing machine and sew. And I am going to sew on the 2 outside lines. Now if I want to have a good scant, then I am going to be just barely off the line towards this center line. So I'll go sew that, and then we'll stop and see what it looks like. So I have these half square triangles sewn now, and hopefully you can see on the camera that I am just, I'm touching the line, but I'm just to the inside of the line. That is where your scant is going to be. It touches the line, but it's just to the inside of the line. And then once you have sewn on each side, then you're going to take your rotary cutter and you're going to cut on the center line from corner to corner. Then after you cut, you're going to press so that it lays under the darker of your 2 colors. Now, these have been oversized for a good reason, because we like to use our block lock rulers to square everything up. So the way you use a block lock ruler is you have the seam on the upper side of your half square triangle and the logo on the block lock on the lower side. And so then you line it up. These are supposed to be 3.5. So you line it up on the 3.5 inch line and you cut off this extra. Now for me, because I'm doing this upside down, I'm going to turn it around so I can cut this accurately on the 3.5 inch line. So I cut this side and I cut this side. And if you have a nice sharp blade, it will just come right off. Now if you have any hanging over on these other 2 sides, then you can just slide your ruler down, turn it around, line it back up on the 3.5 and the 3.5, and I have a little bit to cut off here. But at the same time, when I cut that off, I get what's called the dog ears off. These are the dog ears, and you don't want to have these dog ears in your quilt, so they need to be trimmed off. So all 4 of these units need to be trimmed to 3.5 inches square. Now after you've trimmed them to 3.5 inches square, then you're going to sew these 4 squares, half square triangle units together to make a pinwheel. And this is the center of your block. So go ahead and sew all those together. After you've made your 4 half square triangles and you sewed the 2 rows together, you're going to press one set this way and press the one on the back the opposite direction so that they butt up right here. So you have a good intersection where this gold is kissing this gold. And then you stitch. You want to be just a hair where these 2 lines intersect. you want to be just a hair closer to the edge. And that way, after you sew it, you have a perfect little intersection. Now, on the pressing of this, you can press it all one way, this way, or you can press it all this way. Or there's a little trick that if you pop the seams, open this up a little, and pop where this stitching line is, just make it so it pops, then I can press this side towards my darker color, this darker color, because I have released the seam, and if I release it the other way, then I can press, sometimes it fights you just a little on the releasing, then I can press this seam towards the dark. And what that makes when this gets pressed is this little pinwheel right in the middle. This isn't pressed, so let me see if I can finger press it down so you can see the little pinwheel right in the center of this block. And so give that a good pressing, and once it's all pressed, you're going to take the white triangles that go around these blocks. You're going to take the triangle, you're going to press it in half on the long edge, just so that you have a nice little crease in there. And then this crease is going to match up with your stitching line on your block. Now you're going to notice that when you put the triangle in the middle, that you're going to have these tips that hang off the edge, and they should hang off the edge. The little tips of these two triangles should be hanging off the edge over here and over here. And so where you start stitching is right where this triangle meets the block. So you start your 1/4 inch right at that point, and you stitch all the way across. Now I like to stitch these in this order. I like to do the opposite ones first, and then press them open, and then do the last two. And these would be pressed open at this point, and then I put the last two on. So I'll go do that and show you what it looks like. Now here is my finished block after I've pressed it and sewed those corner white triangles. We call this method of putting triangles on the corner of a square, we call that square in a square method. And you have a separate set of directions in your packet to show you how to do that. When you get all done, you're going to have these dog ears hanging off the edge of your piece, so you'll want to trim those off. Now, for the part of the setting on these square and a square blocks, we have two other colors that you're going to be using. So these will be placed just like you did the white ones, but two colors will touch each other, and then my other side is going to be this. This is where we form the 12-inch block. Up to this point, this part of the block should measure 9 inches. If you're close, that will be good, because these last triangles are a little bit oversized, so we can cut them down. I have finished my 12.5-inch block. I had to trim it down ever so slightly because we've oversized these last triangles to try to get everybody up to 12.5 as close as possible. Now, according to this page of directions that you got in your packet, this is the one that says framing blocks 1 through 4. They talk about these triangles, and at this point you can go ahead and put this rectangle that you've cut. In my quilt that I'm making here, the red is going to be my center star. I could have just as easily made the blue as my center star, but I have to cut according to the directions on this page for which, either number 1 or number 2, of what I want to be my center. Number 1 are the cuts for the center star. Number 2 is the square that goes around the center. So in my quilt that I'm going to be making this year in your demos, the center star is going to be red. So you can, if you want to, go ahead and sew that piece onto your center. So you're kind of putting your setting together in these first 4 blocks just a little bit, not a lot. Hope you have fun making block 1.